On this week in Hockey East, the playoffs are here. We go through every quarterfinal game for you on the women's side and talk about a couple of crucial matchups in men's Hockey East. It's all coming up this week in Hockey East. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of This Week in Hockey East, and it is playoff time as the women's quarterfinals get set to kick off. One game tonight and then 3 on Saturday. We can't wait to talk about it. We're going to run through all 4 games, give you what you need to know. And we start, Tyler, with New Hampshire, which had quite a weekend, winning 2 against Boston College to get themselves the number 3 seed.
Yeah, UNH and Vermont, the 3-6 matchup. Both teams coming in hot. For UNH, it's their first home playoff game in over 10 years. First time since 2013. Looking for their first semifinal appearance since 2020. And we always talk about the dynasties across Hockey East on the women's side. Of course, Northeastern recently, they followed up BU. But if we go back to the beginning of the conference, Providence won 3 in a row, and then the next 4 were won by UNH, 06, 07, 08, 09. So they've got some history. They entered the playoffs on a 4-game winning streak, including that impressive sweep of Boston College. Annie Berry had a career day on Sunday. 2 goals, 2 assists. That's her first multi-goal game and a career-high 4 points. So impressive momentum for them, but, I mean, what about Vermont? I know the Catamounts hit a snag in January. They dropped to the bottom half of the league. But for me, they're the sleeper team of the tournament. They were 2-1 against UNH in the regular season. They have 1 loss in their last 9 games. Most importantly, their final 3 games of the regular season, they shut out Yukon 3-0. Then they went to Matthews Arena, took 5 of a possible 6 points from Northeastern. So their last 3 games against the top 2 seeds, Jesse McPherson, their goaltender, has given up 1 total goal. 93 saves on 94 shots. I had to check that 10 times to make sure it was true, but it's a .989 save percentage against the best teams in Hockey East. So those 2 positive results at Matthews Arena, particularly, they answer a big question about the Catamounts. They were 2-9-3 away from home before those 2 wins. So they've got some renewed confidence playing in a road playoff game, and always a tough building, the Whittemore Center. So can't wait for that showdown.
Yeah, I will raise you a sleeper because I might pick Providence as Providence goes into Boston College in this Friday night quarterfinal game. It's kind of interesting right now. 2 teams that have gone slightly different directions going into these playoffs. Providence comes in. They are probably playing better than almost anyone in the league. And really, how much has this league been about defense, Tyler? All year long, we've talked about goaltenders. We've talked about defense. Providence now, since mid-January, the positive is they scored 7 goals last weekend against Merrimack. So maybe the offense is coming. But since coming back from Belfast on January 12th, Providence is 7-2-4. They've allowed 18 goals total in 13 games. They've only allowed more than 2 goals 1 time. This has all been paced by Hope Walensky in goals since January 5th, coming in relief in that first game against Princeton in Belfast. 15 games, a 141 goals against, a .938 save percentage. Remember, she was the goalie last year that took Providence on their run. She hadn't started before late in February, started against Boston College, all of a sudden took Providence on their run into the Hockey East final. So she's playing really well right now. Providence has locked things down on the defensive end, and they'll take on a Boston College team that, look, did not finish the year amazing, winless in their last 6. They scored 17 goals, though, in their final 4 games, so the offense kind of came back a little bit. They did score 4 Saturday against New Hampshire, but it's really the power play that's been struggling lately for BC. They're just 2 for their last 23 after they had one of the top 2 power plays in Hockey East most of the year. But if we want to spin it positively, talk about what we might see in this quarterfinal, Sammy Tabor scored on Saturday. Abby Newhook had a goal and an assist on Saturday. Gabby Roy had both games against New Hampshire. Katie Pine had a goal in 3 of her last 5 games. So maybe the offensive stars for Boston College figured something out in that last game, even though they didn't win. And can that give them a little bit of momentum into this game against Providence?
All right, other quarterfinal matchups. 9-seed Merrimack at 2-seed Northeastern, Matthews Arena on Saturday night. So on Wednesday, the Warriors went up to Maine, and they beat the Black Bears in overtime 2-1. Allison Reeve, the game-winning goal on a rebound. And Callie Hogarth was brilliant in net with 28 saves from Merrimack. She winds up going 3-0-1 against Maine this year, a save percentage of about 95 and a goals against of 171. And they become the second team all year to beat Maine when trailing after 2 periods. Merrimack's been strong on the road all season. 9 of their 11 wins have come away from home. Now, Matthews Arena against this Northeastern dynasty, it's a different animal, but I think Merrimack should have some confidence coming in, and it's well-deserved. They beat the Huskies in North Andover 1-0 back in October for their first win over Northeastern since 2016. And just a month ago, they go into Matthews, and they give the Huskies everything they could handle in a 4-3 loss. That was back and forth early. It was tied 2-2 after the first period. But Northeastern, the third straight year they've actually hosted Merrimack in the quarterfinals. And if you go back 5 years, this is where the Huskies really tend to make a statement once they get to that first playoff game. Dating back to 2019, in the quarterfinals, they're outscoring opponents 36-5. Now, you know, Merrimack will be watching a lot of tape from their regular season finale. Vermont, over the weekend, held the Huskies to just 1 goal across a 5.2 game stretch for the Catamounts. But, I mean, you can certainly envision, if you're a Northeastern fan, maybe an early goal from Katie Knoll, get some energy in the building, and start reminding everybody that even though the regular season was the year of the Yukon Huskies, it's the Northeastern Huskies going for their 7th straight championship. They just had Megan Carter named the Army ROTC Defender of the Year for a 2nd straight season. Gwyneth Phillips, Hockey East 3 Stars Award, and Ali Lalonde making the Pro Ambitions All-Rookie team. So no, Northeastern didn't go 34-3 or 31-5, but until somebody knocks them off, they are still the team to beat. So should be a great one, and we'll see if Merrimack can pull off another upset.
And speaking of those other Huskies, they take on Holy Cross in our final quarterfinal game. Congratulations to Holy Cross, their first ever postseason win. They grabbed the lead 29 seconds into the game against BU on Wednesday, and did have to come back once in that game at the end of the first period. But how many times in this segment, how many times this year have we talked about goaltending on the women's side has been exceptional from top to bottom in the league? No different from Madison Beck, who made 37 saves on Wednesday. Now, it's interesting. Holy Cross has played Yukon 3 times this year, but Madison Beck's only seen them once. So that'll be interesting. And, you know, in a single elimination tournament, you can get goalied sometimes. And that's the case where Holy Cross is they get a win over BU. But now this Yukon team, and again, can Holy Cross score enough to beat this Yukon team? That's the question. Yukon's only allowed 2 goals 4 times since January 6th. They've only allowed 3 once in that span, which was that lone loss to Vermont a couple of weeks ago. It's interesting going back, and Yukon did a nice retrospective on their website, kind of looking back. Remember, Yukon lost their first 3 Hockey East games to start this year, and Chris McKenzie switched up the lines at that point. They went 21 games unbeaten in Hockey East after that point, and the lines basically look the same now as they did then. It's been impressive to watch what they've done enough on the offensive end. It's been really impressive to watch how good both goalies have been all season. It was Tia Chan last weekend. She had 2 shutouts in gotta-have-it games to clinch the number 1 seed for Yukon against BU. So can Holy Cross get enough offense to score against this Yukon team? And how does Yukon handle being the hunted for the first time as the number 1 seed? Should be interesting.
All right, time to take a few short shifts. Brought to you as always by the Shift Group, helping elite athletes and veterans become elite sales professionals. All fired up with Yukon and Northeastern. That's a home and home. Friday is the Hockey East game of the week on Nesson at Matthews Arena. Saturday, 3 p.m., ESPN Plus afternoon game in Storrs, Connecticut. Now, this could be a first-round playoff preview. It would require Vermont passing Northeastern. They do have a game in hand, so we'll see. But, yeah, that could set up a Huskies 8-9 matchup. But for Northeastern, you can try to nail down a common thread, identify some sort of trend, but the patterns are so complicated. Here's what I know for sure. Northeastern is the team that nobody should want to play in a win-or-go-home scenario. They just handed Maine their first home regulation loss of the entire season, 4-0 win. So they're just the second team to shut out the Black Bears all year. And the resume for Northeastern, it's nuts. Like if you're talking about maybe like a basketball tournament committee, you look at the high-level wins, they're probably an at-large bid, but of course we know how the pairwise works. But just they got 2 wins over Maine, 2 overtime wins over BU, and Northeastern is the only team not named Denver to beat BC at Connie Forum this year. Now, they're not perfect. They've lost to UMass Lowell recently. They lost that first game to Maine 5-1, so they will need some help to get an at-large bid. But I want to highlight Alex Campbell, a guy who hasn't got nearly enough attention. 2 more goals for him on Saturday. He leads the team with 18. And if you look at the Hockey East goal-scoring league leaderboard, the first 3 names won't surprise you. Cutter Gauthier, Macklin Celebrini, Ryan Leonard. But in 4th place, It's not Will Smith or Gabe Perreault. It's not a Nadeau brother. It is Northeastern's Alex Campbell, who's having a phenomenal year for Jerry Keefe, who said back in the fall that if we want to get to where we want to go, Alex Campbell has to play a major role. He had a hat trick to end the first half against Brown. He has stayed red hot for the second half. It's happening right now for Campbell and Northeastern. Now, Yukon, we know the offensive struggles. They've been held to 2 goals or fewer in 9 straight conference games, but that does include a 2-1 win at UNH, a 2-1 win at Providence, and a 2-0 win versus Maine. Now, can you win that way in the Hockey East tournament? Actually, yes. I mean, you look at Providence last year, they had a 2-1 overtime win to win the first round and the quarterfinals to get to the Garden. They almost had themselves a 2-1 overtime win or regulation win to beat BU in the semifinals. So, yeah, it's not the worst style to play, I guess, if you have to win with just a couple of goals a night. But, of course, Yukon and I know all their fans know they have the talent to score a whole lot more. So maybe that starts against Cameron Whitehead and Northeastern this weekend.
Yeah, that's the thing with Yukon, right? It feels like, I know they haven't scored at the rate they'd want, but it feels like the numbers would show you at some point it's going to come. So the question is, does that come this weekend? One other men's series that we have to talk about, and we've talked about these two teams a lot, so we don't need to necessarily dive in specifically, but this is New Hampshire's season this weekend as they take on Boston College. For all of the good things New Hampshire has done this year, and to their credit, they have gotten right here at the right time. 3 ranked wins in their last 4 games, including that sweep of Maine and at home against UMass. Here's the problem, though. All of New Hampshire's success in terms of their pairwise has been at home. So they're not getting the bump that you get from that road win, because remember, the road game is valued more than the home win. Plus, that UMass game in overtime, that Quinnipiac win is in overtime, so you don't get the full win. So as much as it seems like on paper UNH has done all this great resume stuff, that's why they're still trailing a little bit in the pairwise. But you get number 1 Boston College twice this weekend, and Sunday's game specifically on the road. If you could find a way to get that, it will go a long, long way for New Hampshire's chances. They might be too far out again to get to a cut line of 14 and maybe even, a higher number than that, the way things have gone. Excuse me. But New Hampshire, if they have any chance, they have to find a way to get at least one this weekend, and preferably it would need to be Sunday. Now, Boston College has actually built a big enough lead in the pairwise that they could get swept this weekend and still be number 1, but they are trying to win Hockey East too. BC needs 5 points over their last 3 games to guarantee the 1 seed. They need 6 points to guarantee the outright title over BU. BU is completely off this weekend. They have a bye week. So for Boston College, 2 wins would lock up the Hockey East regular season title. They could potentially do it on Sunday at home. The big thing for BC is, where are they health-wise? We saw Saturday they were without Gabe Perreault. They were without Eamon Powell. We've been told both of those injuries don't seem long-term, but when you take 2 of the 5 guys out of a power play unit, it makes a difference no matter how much talent's on the ice. Now, if they end up not playing, they'll have a full week of practice time. It'll be a little bit different, but they did go 0 for 6 on Saturday against Vermont. So where is BC health-wise, and can UNH take advantage of that in what is their biggest weekend of the season? We shall see. A lot of other games that we'll talk about this week for the men's side are, you got to have it for pairwise purposes. Providence, 2 games against Merrimack, you got to have it. UMass, 2 games against Lowell, you got to have it. Maine, 2 games at Vermont, you got to have them. Otherwise, it's going to drop you in the pairwise. And this is where the pairwise doesn't necessarily match up with a conference as deep as Hockey East, because we know we would not be surprised at all if any of those teams beat the ones that we just listed. But for pairwise purposes, those teams are a little farther down. The other ones wanting to stay inside the bubble right now. It's a gotta have it weekend, Tyler. And it's a weekend you are not going to want to miss, with playoff action on the women's side, great games on the men's side. We're closing in down the home stretch on This Week in Hockey East.